Hey there, guys. All right, today we are hitting up some potential history. It's been a hot minute, and today we are doing potential histories video on Gallipoli, D-Day's idiot stepbrother. Now, in the Great War series, we got a bit of a talk on Gallipoli, but what I think is going to happen here is that we are going to get more of the bigger picture of Gallipoli and the plans, and perhaps some things that uh, I'm assuming, I'm guessing, typically based on how Potential History tends to do his videos. I think we're going to get insight into things that we did not get insight into during the World War One Great War series. I think the Great War series did it really well. I've said that before. The way they tackled it week by week, and we kind of like got information along the way, so that we kind of viewed it through the eyes of the people at the time. I think that was really well done. This is probably going to be viewed more, uh, perhaps with the lens of hindsight. I think will be how potential history tends to hit it. But potential history also does a really good job of handling hindsight and being like, this is our hindsight. This is kind of what he believes the information that they had available at the time and the conclusions they could have drawn from their information at the time, blah, blah, that sort of thing. Potential History always does a great job. I literally never have complaints with this man. I think there have been 2 times where I've disagreed with Potential History, and those disagreements are purely based on the facts presented, and I drew a different conclusion from the facts presented than he did, right? Those are the only like couple. Those like I think it was a video on like French tanks or something like that. It was like something involving the French. I think was where I had a disagreement with Potential History. So I could have also I think I admitted I was like I can see his argument, but yeah. Um, don't really know what else to expect here. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
Ow! You! Me?
You think this is funny?
In
Yeah.
a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary. Oh my goodness!
Hold on, I want to see these numbers. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Uh, for the British, only 3,000 died of disease. I thought they would have had way more than that. 102. Damn. These casualties are high as fuck.
I tried, Mr.
Churchill.
I really did.
Oh, what now?
On June 6, 1944, the Allied coalition consisting of mainly troops from the United States, Great Britain, and Canada, along with soldiers from several other countries,
Canada.
assaulted the beaches of Normandy in the biggest amphibious invasion to ever take place in history, codenamed Operation Overlord. This attack took years of planning and preparation and is regarded as one of the most successful military operations in history, especially considering the risks involved. This video, though, is not about this. This is about Operation Overlord's idiot stepbrother, the Dardanelles Campaign, or more commonly known as Gallipoli. By the end of 1914,
Oh god. Y'all, you've heard me talk about Battlefield 1 before. As such a good battlefield. One of the best. I would probably put it top 3. I loved Battlefield 1. Um, I would have probably, the progression system in Battlefield 1, the current modern day progression system, I am not a fan of in video games, in shooters. Hence why I've fallen off from playing them. I honestly, the last time I think I really actively played a multiplayer shooter would have been Battlefield 5. I only really played that because I had friends to play it with. Once my friends were like kind of sick of it. Actually, I started getting sick of it before my friends did. But I was like, this is pretty bad. Battlefield 1 though, I played that shit so much on my own time. Ugh, I love that game. I genuinely love that game. But anyway, the progression system, I miss the old days. I love the progression system in the OG Modern Warfare 2. I think that one was like probably peak, I'd say. The one I remember the most anyway. Anyways.
The situation on the Western Front had stagnated and bogged down into attritional trench warfare. Britain, upon being confronted with this reality, found itself out of its element, as it was a naval power stuck in a ground war. It had already used its navy to blockade Germany and fight successful battles against their navy. This, however, was not able to sway anything on the Western Front. In January 1915, First Lord of the Admiralty Winston Churchill, yep, that one, proposed a plan to get the Navy back into the fight. With the Ottomans siding with the Germans and actively fighting against Britain's ally Russia, who had been requesting material assistance from the British, he formulated a plan to open up a route to the Black Sea. The objective was twofold. First, to provide said assistance, and second, to hopefully eliminate the Ottomans from the war, and in doing so, convince neutral nations such as possibly Greece to enter the war on the British side. On January 13, 1915, Churchill's plan was approved by the British War Council. At this point, though, the plan only called for naval operations, and was only given a little over a month to be implemented. On February 19th, the first attacks on the Dardanelles by 2 Royal Navy ships and 1 French ship took place. The naval assaults continued for about 2 months, but ran into multiple problems. The Ottoman defenses consisted of long-range artillery on the shore and naval mines in the sea. To combat this, the British had to employ battleships to attack the land, and civilian minesweeping ships to clear the sea. The problem with this was that neither could make the first blow to begin the attack. If the battleships went first, they could silence the shore guns, but would strike mines and be damaged. If the minesweepers went first, they could clear the mines, but would take heavy fire from the artillery on the shore. In fact, in 9 out of...
Was this talked about in the Great War? Because I don't remember this information in the Great War. I remember them talking about the Strait having problems, but I don't... And I think I do remember the coastline artillery, but I don't remember this issue of who go first.
Out of the 11 attempts the minesweepers made to go out and do their job, they had to retreat before fully being able to begin sweeping for mines. By April, it was clear the strategy was not working, and the British opted to begin landing troops on the shore. These included the British 29th Division, landing at Cape Helles, the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, better known as Anzac, landing at what would later become known as Anzac Cove, and some French forces made up of Senegalese troops landing at Kum Kale on the Asian shore as a diversion. And this is the part of the Gallipoli battle that is present in common memory, and to put it briefly, it was a complete train wreck. This landing was not in any way the picture of amphibious landings we have in our heads from subsequent wars. Instead of specialized landing craft, soldiers were moving onto the beach just simply using rowboats, which made them easy targets for Ottoman soldiers. Anzac Beach was especially problematic as the Ottomans held the high ground on the bluffs overlooking the landing zones. The Navy attempted to remedy this problem, but to no effect due to the shallow trajectory of their guns.
It's over!
Anzacs.
I have the high ground! You underestimate my
Navy.
Don't try it! You fucking bad cunt!
I was hoping he would do something like that. Oh, I'm so happy he did.
Many of the landings on Cape Helles were unopposed, though, until British troops began to move inland and the Ottomans counterattacked. Although no objectives were taken and the casualties were high, the landing was technically successful as Commonwealth forces established a toehold on their positions, and this was enough to give the British commanders optimism for the future of the operation. These hopes, though, were soon dashed as the battle deteriorated into the same trench warfare as the Western Front. Due to the ferocity of the Ottomans and their insistence on counterattacks, for which they paid dearly, Commonwealth forces were never able to move any further inland and were stuck in the same positions for about 8 months. I could recount to you the actions within this period, but it's just a lot of unsuccessful attacks from both sides. And over the course of the battle, the Anzacs were only able to advance once, but were quickly repelled. Due to the very rocky terrain present, conditions deteriorated very quickly. Both sides realized early on that they were unable to bury their dead, which began to rot out in the hot temperatures over the summer. This in turn attracted flies infecting the drinking water, which led to outbreaks of disease. Many truces were called throughout the course of the battle to clear the dead to attempt to combat this problem. Both the British and Ottomans were low on supplies and ammunition at times, but the Ottomans were better off than most people think, having plenty of weapons and ammunition and also making use of captured ones. In many places on the line, the opposing trenches were very close to each other, and fraternization was common at times. Commonwealth forces also had problems with combat fatigue due to their front lines being so close to the coast. Because of this, all the ground they held was within the range of Ottoman artillery, so they were unable to rotate troops on and off the front as they were still in danger while they were anywhere on shore. And actually, when the Commonwealth forces do retreat between the 18th and 20th of December of 1915, they have to do so in a segmented fashion to prevent them from being shelled by the Ottomans as they attempt to leave. And this retreat is the only real example of intelligent strategic thinking in this campaign. A campaign that was supposed to be a big, out-of-the-box move. but it's World War I, so trench warfare. By the end of it,
Yeah.
44,000 Allied and 85,000
We're
Ottoman
gonna
soldiers.
okay, so we still have a few minutes left in the video. He's gonna give us our analysis. As I said, oh, sneeze. Am I gonna sneeze? I think I can hold it. Resist the power. As I've said before, and I will continue to say, the concept of Gallipoli is a good idea. It was a good spot to land within striking distance of Constantinople. Where it would have if they had been able to push out from that peninsula, it would have opened up a pretty solid front line, an additional front line to apply pressure on these central powers. However, right, the reality of the situation is the people in charge of Gallipoli were not given enough time to plan it, or maybe they just decided they didn't need the time to plan it and they just went ahead with it. I'm leaning more towards that they weren't given the time and that they were just told, do it. Do it. So they launched. Just because, and I purely say that because of, Churchill's later decisions in, World War II, where he was very much someone that, seemed to, at least my understanding, planned things out. So I think if he had more control over his brainchild here of Gallipoli, he would have had the land invasion more planned out. But he was not, just me insinuating here based on the stuff that I am aware of in my head. Churchill was not given the time to really plan this thing out, and he may have been like, we should attack there. And then, after that, they may not have listened to him. I don't know. But, yeah. I think good idea and concept, just absolutely horribly executed with no proper planning.
Were dead, and Churchill was demoted, never to be heard from again.
Top 10 celebrity career comebacks.
But this does go down as the worst defeat in British military history, and the second worst in Australian military history. The memory of this battle is often one of a
That image of the Emu War, that went hard.
missed opportunity. That if the Royal Navy was more effective, or if the infantry was better supported, the goals of the operation could have been achieved, and that the stalemate would have been broken.
Oh, is he going to fucking completely say I'm wrong in thinking that if they had planned properly that they could have won?
But I think these are retcon sentiments to help justify the terrible plan.
Oh?
Because if you're being honest with yourself, this plan was awful. It was planned with the assumption that just the sheer presence of the British military would be enough to cause the Turks to capitulate. And I think...
Okay, yeah, no, I don't think that. I'm like, they needed more time to plan things out and devise a proper strategy here. I think the concept of what Gallipoli was to do was good.
I think this is maybe in the smallest way justifiable, given the status of the Ottoman Empire in the years leading up, having been dubbed the sick man of Europe. But to say that some minor British military action will cause them to fold is just sheer hubris.
Yeah.
I mean, just listen to this.
The reason the British thought that fighting the Ottoman Empire was a good idea is the belief that the Ottoman Empire was a completely rotten state with an hopeless army that only had to be kicked. It was like kicking in a rotting door of a collapsing building.
Sounds really familiar, doesn't it? The Ottomans had been doing well fighting the Russians in the Caucasus, and now had the advantage of fighting on and for their home territory. There is absolutely no evidence that a few British destroyers were going to change their mind about their status in the war. Second, this operation was not given close to enough attention in time to be planned. As I said earlier, within the span of a month, this operation goes from the drawing board to being put in action, and that is when it was only supposed to be a naval operation. The amphibious assault is tacked on later only when the initial plan fails, and also seems very underdeveloped given its rough start and equally poor results. Also, given the months of naval bombardment, it's rather obvious to the Ottomans where the British landings would take place. Compare this to Operation Overlord 1944. Years of planning and deception go into pulling off this invasion successfully, and this is probably due somewhat, at least, to the lessons learned from the poor planning at Gallipoli.
I don't, you know, here's the thing though. How much do we actually learn from the lessons of the past? That's one thing where I'm like, I don't think we tend to listen to the lessons of the past. I think we tend to do a pretty bad job at it. Um, I I kind of just think this was the right people in the right positions at the right time, with enough authority and political authority to do what they knew was the correct thing to do. Um, and again, I'm gonna throw a bone to Churchill here and say that, um, politically, I do not fucking like Churchill. Honestly, like I do not, in general, I do not like Churchill. But as a military leader, I think Churchill was probably pretty good. My assumption. I am assuming here. I have nothing to really back it up because I am not a military historian and I do not look that shit up. I am just going off of assumptions here based on information I have gathered from, watching all these videos on World War One, World War Two throughout the years. Because also I find I don't research World War Two or World War One on my free time. That shit bores me. But what I've gathered here, I make the assumption that Churchill was a competent military commander. And thus, I believe that Churchill would have given the planning more time. But based on how we've seen the rest of the command structure of the British Empire at this time in World War One act, we see it with like Douglas Haig, people like that. I'm kind of going to assume that Churchill was not given that time. I'm going to throw him the bone.
It is hard to not see the cruel irony in this scenario, given how it was supposed to break the cycle of trench warfare and ended up becoming some of the worst of it due to what I would call near criminal mistakes made by commanders. And unfortunately, there aren't really too many impacts from this campaign. The biggest would probably be the entry of Italy to the war on the side of the Allies during the first few weeks of the campaign as it looked more promising, resulting in an additional front for the Austro-Hungarians to their west. The campaign did, though, greatly shape the national identities of many of the countries of the soldiers involved. Former Ottoman officers from this battle, such as Mustafa Kemal, went on to found and shape the Republic of Turkey after the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Anzac soldiers who had fought under their own flag for the first time in history became a thing of pride for Australians and New Zealanders alike. But Gallipoli as a whole was, and should be remembered as, another pointless bloody slugfest in a war that had 2 years and many more battles still to come.
Don't we picture the...
That was Gallipoli, D-Day's idiot stepbrother by potential history. Not sure how old this video is. This does feel like a bit of one of his older videos. Still solid, but not his most solid of work. I think certainly a step above many history channels on YouTube. I really like the way his potential history tackles things and battles in general is more my speed. The way to talk about these things and discuss and analyze them, as opposed to the channels that just do like. I love these channels, don't get me wrong, but like channels like Kings and Generals, stuff like that, those kind of things, not my speed. Whereas discussing battles in the vein that potential history does, that's my shit. That's the way I prefer it. So I still think this was very good. Not his most solid work. I think he could do better here with covering Gallipoli. It felt like there was perhaps more analysis here in the latter half of the video that maybe he wanted to say, but maybe he felt like would have dragged the video on or something. It kind of felt like there was more to be said. And I do think that there is more to be said in regards to Gallipoli. But overall, good job. It's only an 8 minute and 40-second video. One of his older ones. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.